This is an introduction and an overview of assessment and more information about assessment 1. So this will be the first in 3 videos. Assessment 2 and 3 will be in the next video, and assessment 4 will be in the third video. So there are 4 assessment items in the subject, and I went over these in the online meeting. The first is your leadership challenge proposal. So this is where you identify an area of challenge or change that you wish to enact, and we'll go over this in detail in this video. That's due on the 2nd of August and it's 10%. The second one is a personal best leadership experience. Now, Cousins and Posner, your workbook for the subject, write extensively about personal best leadership experiences, and it's always good for us to reflect back on those to see what was good, and what value we can take out of that. So that will be a group post, and that's due on the 9th of August. That's 10% as well. Then that rolls into, so there's a lot of information in that group post. However, all that information is grist for the mill because it adds to your third assessment, which is your personal best leadership experience report. So this is where you'll do a comprehensive report, and that's due after the session break on the 13th of September. And then you will submit parts of your learning journal, and with your leadership challenge, that proposal will be input into the learning journal, and I'll talk about the learning journal in a minute too, which I did in the introductory online meeting as well. And you'll have a personal action plan for your future, like a blueprint or a roadmap for your future based on what you've learnt in the subject. So let's keep going. So assessment 1 and 4 require you to use the learning journals. Now the learning journals have been fixed and they can be edited now, and you can delete things or whatever as well. So if you go onto the Interact 2 site and you look down the left-hand side at assessments, the journals are underneath that. When you input to your journal, that's your own private entry, okay? That isn't shown to anyone else because it's only shown to me, and then I'll mark it in the learning journal there too. There's a facility for me to mark it. Now the learning journal entries get started early. There is one for most of these. And then you repurpose 4 of them for your final assessment with your personal action plan. So this is how they're laid out, and this is when they're due in the journal. Now make sure you're inputting them into a timely way. I will look at how you're going. If it looks like you're not inputting into the journal, I'll then contact you. Really important because it's part of your reflective practice, and so you'll be able to reflect each week, put things into the learning journal. Now the learning journals, I was asked, is this a formal academic writing? No, it isn't. However, some people will write formally. It's more informal writing because it's your reflections, your journal entries. And when we write in our journals, in our blogs, etc., we don't write in a very strong academic language. We write in a conversational, easy to read style. However, it is important that you bring in some citations and to back up, give evidence to what you're writing about. Provide evidence from your own personal experience, from your work context, community context, etc. Back it up with some citations. You don't have to, that doesn't have to heavily be done, but if you're reading something or there's something in the workbook that resonates, back it up. Don't want lots and lots of loaded opinions, and I don't want you to show bias and assumptions. So, your underlying and bias and assumptions may come through. Look at the way you're writing and be critical about the way you write, and don't pepper it with a lot of your own opinions. Go to the literature, go to what you're reading, to what your peers are posting. Provide evidence based on your experience, your observations, so that's the learning journals. The first one being that's got to be submitted is your leadership challenge proposal, and I've got one entry there already. Well, that was as of a couple of days ago. So these are the entries that you have to put in here. They go down further. So just make sure you keep up to date with sticking them in. Okay? You shouldn't have an issue with them at all. So the challenge proposal is due on the 2nd of August. I haven't put the return date in there, which I should have done. It's normally about 3 weeks later. Okay, 15 working days. It's 500 words. You don't have to write War and Peace. It's in the Learning Journal, so as such it's not really an academic formal piece of writing. However, it is important that you do some referencing. So the task is to read that 3rd chapter of Cousins and Posner and select your personal best leadership project. So what's that about? So note that the terms of this assessment are somewhat broader than Cousins and Posner's if you are having trouble identifying a specific project. So you look at what they've put there. You don't have to go down to that detail. It doesn't have to be a process. We want it to be a bit broader. So have a look at what I say now and think about that. So identify a leadership challenge you are facing that you would like to work on. It can be in a work or non-work context. For example, a community organisation or professional body you are involved in. It should be something you are happy to experiment with, trying different approaches to leadership on. As you learn new ideas throughout the subject, you will be encouraged to try different ideas in the context of your challenge. It should also be a challenge that you are open to consider possible alternative possibilities for action. 2 possibilities there. Sorry about that. Got my tongue twisted. So, in essence, it's going to be something that resonates for you. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to put in place a process, you don't have to put in place a performance management system in your organisation. It's something, you might be going to meetings, you might be challenged with facilitating meetings. I have one student that emailed me and said in this time of lockdown she's had a lot more time to reflect. She wants to now become much more reflective and put in place self-leadership practices and to actually address those. It could be something like that, okay? It could be something in a team where you're working that you want to address. There might be conflict. There might be different ways that you want to look at coming together. So describe the challenge that you would like to make a leadership intervention on. An intervention is an approach or practice that you will use to change the situation. So, as I said, it's an approach or a practice that you use to change the situation. So you might be doing something the way you've always done it and realizing it's not working. So you might want to change that situation. So you put in place a different way of implementing that particular approach, or you might wish to change your behaviour in a certain way. Those sorts of things. So carefully and richly describe in detail the challenge opportunity by addressing. So you've got to describe the behaviour or situation that is challenging and requires leadership. What happened or how did this challenge come about? What emotions, thoughts, feelings or ideas does this challenge evoke for you? What is at stake or vulnerable in this situation? And why and how am I affected by this leadership challenge? Have I felt similar feelings before? How am I currently responding to this challenge? So think about how you're responding. As I said, it might not be working. What can you do to change that? What resources do you need to address the leadership challenge? And these may be resources that you've never thought of before. This might be a mentor, it might be a coach, it might be space, it might be 2 hours a week, half an hour a day, lots and lots of things. The marking rubric. So this is a leadership project, and you're going to identify and describe a real-world project or challenge as the framework for applying principles and practices of leadership. So you're going to try out some of these. So you might see that enabling others to act, which is one of the 5 practices, which can be much richer than just what Kuzners and Posner proffer. That is connecting, that's really enabling others to act. So that's getting out of the way, letting go, sharing the leadership, which is really important, practicing relational leadership, identifying power relations so you can identify that you're controlling too much or somebody else is, and that you can share things. So enabling others to act may be one of those areas. There's 5 and there's more. So to get a high distinction, you'd have to clearly articulate with sufficient detail for the audience to picture the scenario. So I need to be able to, and your peers need to be able to picture that scenario. It's current and highly suitable for applying the principles and practices of leadership. So you might be just applying some more critically reflective leadership practices. It is shown how the participant's leadership adds value to the management task through the construction of meaning. Specific critical tasks and management technologies are clearly identified. Okay, so you actually identify what you're actually going to be doing and how that relates back to what you're learning. So to be actually, as I've always said, to get above a credit, you really need to be looking like you're really being able to synthesize and critically analyze things, that you're reading kind of beyond the literature and interrogating beyond the kind of the normal that we kind of look at, and then we move down. And so look at the criteria, the marking rubric. If you don't describe your project or challenge very clearly, I may send it back for you. I normally don't do rewrites, but I think it's important for this particular assessment for you to get it right, because it frames up, what you're doing in the subject. So I will send it back to you, and with really good feedback for you to actually rewrite it. And some people are going to submit their ideas. I don't want War and Peace when you submit your ideas. I just want a very, very quick idea, a short paragraph, a couple of sentences, and I'll say, yeah, you're on the right track. I'm not going to give feedback on work that's nearly finished. That's actually marking. Okay, so if you have any other questions about this assessment or anything else, post to the assessment discussion forum and/or email me. If it's about assessment, I will repost that to the assessment forum if you haven't posted it up, because it's really good for your peers to get my response as well. And sometimes others will respond before I get a chance, which is lovely. This is a community of practice. We're all learning together. It's important that we all share the leadership. So I hope that makes it clear for you, and the next 2 videos will be coming soon. Cheers.